Hariom, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this program as we celebrate the completion of the Women Seeker project, as well as honor all the babies that made this project possible. Before we begin, please note that we will be having an informal Q&A session at the end of the program. So please keep any questions you have ready and you can message them to me when we have our session at the end of the program. We will now begin our program with our first speaker. Our first speaker for today will be Brahmacharini Akalkaji. Brahmacharini Akalkaji was born in India and brought up in the United States. She completed her studies in California. She was inspired to devote her life to the study and service of Sanatana Dharma by the vision of Puja Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda. She completed the residential Vedanta Hindu philosophy course under Chinmaya Mission Trinidad and Tobago. She's currently posted to Chinmaya Ramdut, New Jersey, for adults and children.
Hari Om. Thank you so much to Krishna Priya. Hari Om to everyone. We'll start with an invocation prayer. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. It was such a beautiful bhajan. We're so happy to see everyone. And this is very wonderful opportunity, especially International Women's Day, to reflect on the Devis, how many have contributed to wonderful tradition of spirituality across the world. And as Krishna Priya mentioned, also we are celebrating completion of the manuscript for Woman Seeker. So for those of you who might not know, one question was coming up for us in our study classes and amongst, especially our young women today. And their question was, what about those who have walked the spiritual path, who are women? What was their vision? How did they contribute to the glory of Sanatana Dharma? And for that aim, we have been reflecting on lives of great saints, those who might be walking all different kinds of paths. Some were householders, some were rishikas, some were queens, some were scholars, poets. So many are there, and we just don't know their names. Maybe we might not be familiar. So today, I'll start off by speaking a little bit on one very amazing Rishika, Vedic Rishika. Her name was Vakdevi. Now, in our Shastras, when we speak about the Vedas, it is said that Vedas are the very life breath of Ishvara, Bhagavan. And what this means is that knowledge manifests concurrently with the universe. You cannot have, as Gurudev always says, this is not a chaos, but a cosmos. So cosmos means that there's some rhyme and reason, there's some wisdom that is there holding together in place all of the laws of the universe. Now that wisdom has to be there along with this universe. They cannot be separate. And neither can knowledge be separate from the one who is the house of that knowledge. And that one can only be the Lord. And what happens is, what is a Rishika or a Rishi? They are those who are seers. Trikala Darshi, they are called. This Darshi word means one who sees. Or mantra drashtas, ones who see the mantras. So what happens is that those who purify themselves in the seat of meditation, their mind becomes so pure, a conduit, that infinite wisdom that is ever present, that which is the life breath of God, that manifests through them. We don't call them composers or writers, we call them seers. Because what happens is when, if like I'm wearing glasses, right? If they were occluded, then that which is right in front of me, I wouldn't be able to see. Or if I take off my glasses also, I can't see anything. But for the sake of this example, right? You cannot see. So that knowledge is ever present, but only those who are pure are able to see that wisdom so clearly. And Vagdevi was one such Rishika. She is found in Rig Veda, which is oldest scripture of mankind. And in the Rig Veda, amongst 27 women seers, 27, one is this Rishika Vagdevi. She was born to Rishi Amrana, and so she's also called Vagamrini. And in the seat of her meditation, in that mind, she saw what is called as Devi Suktam. Suktams they're called hymns. Hymns meaning that which propitiates the divine. But something very interesting about Vagdevi's Devi Suktam is that, for example, in Purusha Suktam, that Suktam is giving praise and speaking regarding the divine, that sees 1,000 hands, 1,000 eyes, ever present everywhere. So like that, propitiating that Purusha, Supreme Purusha, cosmic being. Now, what is interesting about Devi Suktam is that Vagdevi, the words of the mantra are not in a third person or second person. They are not referring to the divine. She speaks as the divine. The word that is used is aham, I. It is quite an amazing sutta. Really, when we enjoyed so much reading and learning about it, because even seeing the words on the page, I am, aham, it is so powerful because it is showing that she is not speaking about, she is speaking as that pure divine. So we'll just show a couple of the verses. You must see all of them. They are so beautiful. And the other unique feature before we get to the verses themselves is that in the verses, see, a lot of times, what do we get caught up between? Is the Lord that which is nameless, formless, actionless, infinite? Or is the Lord embodied, taking on many, many forms, changing all the time, this, manifest universe? And we think that one might contradict the other. But the amazing thing is in the Suktam, Devi speaks as both. She says, I am that which is the absolute, pure consciousness. I am also that ruler which is the one who is propitiated as all the devatas, all the divinities around us. I am that one also. So she sees no division. And that contradiction is only in our mind because we tend to see things as if it is one, it cannot be the other. But in fact, if we just think a little bit, there are many things that are at once and the same time. Two seemingly opposite things are true at one and the same time. Like, for example, if I ask all of us, are we moving or are we sitting still? And we might feel we are sitting still, but this earth is moving And not only is the earth moving, it is also rotating around the sun. So we are in fact moving, and we are still at the same time. Depending on that perspective we are taking, we might say one or we say the other, but both can be true at one and the same time. So also we cannot put any limits on the divine. Is the divine male? Is the divine female? Is the divine both? Is the divine beyond? Answer is yes. Now there are a lot of memes like that. They'll say all the list, the end they'll just say yes, all of them. So in the Suktam, Goddess herself, Goddess Devi herself, speaking through the form of Vak Devi, she says, I am all of this. It is so incredible. So now I'll just share a couple so that you'll all be able to see. So in Mantra 3, she says, Aham Rashri Sangamani Vasunam Chikitushi Prathama Yagnyanam Tama Deva Vyadhaduhu Purutrata Bhurishtratam Bhurya Bhuraveshyanti. So she says, I am the ruler, Rashri. Rashri, that sovereign queen, she's the one who bestows all of the vasus, meaning all wealth. And at the same time, she says, I am pure awareness, first among those who are worthy of worship. So to understand that which is considered ruler, there are three things that make one a ruler. One must have Shakti, power. One, without power, nothing can be accomplished. Second is one must have knowledge. Without knowledge, rulership is not possible. Oh, I am owning many houses. Where are they? I don't know where they are. So one must have knowledge. And finally, that one must also be pervading, all pervading. So when she says, I am the queen, I am the ruler, Rashri, she pervades all strength that we perceive is her strength, and all knowledge that we pursue is her only. Therefore, once Shubhaniji and I were speaking, and Shubhaniji said very nice reflection Guruji had about love for Guru. He said, why do people go here and go there trying to get this and that? Why not go to Guru who has everything? In that one place, you will find everything you need. So like that, she is saying, I am the ruler. We look for power here and there in this worldly life. She says, I am that supreme power. We look for all, what is valuable in life. I am the source of all of that value only. And therefore, Prathama Yagnyanam, I am that which is foremost that is worshipped. We might think we are worshipping, a powerful person or a talented person, or maybe, we are worshipping material things, or we are worshipping different forms of God. Even in that yajna, they'll say, this offering is for Agni, Vayu, all the devatas. But amongst all of them, she's saying, I am the source of their power, and therefore I am the one first among those. And in the previous verses, we don't have time to go through all of them, but in the previous verses, she says very clearly, I am the source of power for all the devatas. So you see, the first thing is aham. It is so amazing. Therefore, when we see me, the devatas placed in many beings, some of these are kind of little, cryptic in the phrasing, meaning that which is in all beings, which is that pure awareness, that which enlivens all beings, I am that. Devi is all of these things, and in this way she dwells in all beings. Abundantly means in everything that power is manifesting. She's saying, that is me. So we have to also imagine, not just reading the words on the page, but feeling, what is it to be the one speaking this? That when you chant this verse, you are invoking this power as aham itself. It is so amazing. So in this way, she is all that is there in this very variegated universe, this very changing, multifarious names and forms. She is the source of all of those. And then this is such an amazing verse. We loved this very much when we came across. She says, Aham suve pitaramasya murdhan. I am the one that brings forth that progenitor, that father, meaning that that which we consider the source, whether we call Brahmaji, however we call, that which is the source of all beings. I am the one that brings that one. No? On the then summit, meaning that at the apex of this earth itself. Mama yonihi apsvanta samudre, and my yoni, meaning that cosmic womb where infinite universes are rising and subsiding, infinite, that rises, that my womb rises in the ocean, infinite ocean. And that ocean is Satchidananda Brahman. From the absolute rises me as the womb that gives forth this universe like that. And we should see, I'm also the absolute, and I'm also that womb that is giving forth all the beings, all of the universes. So we can think what a sophisticated vision of the cosmos is present in our scriptures. The concept that there's no boundary to this, that which we call this manifest universe is there. That which comes from the infinite. That's why in that Purna Madha Purna Midam, it says that which comes forth from the infinite is infinite. And it does not take anything away from the infinite from which it came. So like that, Tato Vitishte Bhuvananu Vishwottamum Dhyam Varshmanopa Sprashami. So then she says that in this way, I am the one spreading through all the worlds. And I touch every, that all the highest, all meaning that from the highest to what we would consider, there's no high or low really, but in the sense that the highest apex of all that is imaginable, I touch with my eminence, meaning my greatness is there also. So these beautiful verses are showing that same ability to be both the absolute and the one which is embodied in all names and forms. There's no contradiction, no conflict between these ideas. So this is just a little small taste of that vision of Vagdevi. And again, we should just think that in the process of chanting these mantras, what they do is, not only do the mantras clarify our mind, cleanse the mind, concentrate the mind, but there are many ways in which even these sounds, they evoke a lot of subtle changes in us, changes that are imperceptible, but they, not imperceptible so much as subtle, that is a better word. They're so subtle, we cannot, it is not so grossly visible, but we can think how this tradition has carried forth all of these suktams, the power of these things, power of them to transform the mind and to purify it so that we might also come to see the vision of Vagdevi. So thank you so much for this blessing to be able to reflect with all wonderful Devis and all of you here today. And now I will pass it over back to Krishna Priya. Hari Om.
Thank you so much, Akalkaji, for that incredibly powerful speech. That was such a thought-provoking intro to Vagdevi. I know I'm very moved by that. So our next speaker will be Swamini Radhikanandaji. Swamini Radhikanandaji's spiritual search culminated in 1978 when she met Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayanandaji and heard him speak on the Bhagavad Gita in Washington, D.C. After attending weekly Vedanta study groups for a number of years, she joined the 2-year Vedanta course at Sandipani Sadhanalaya, Mumbai in 1987, under the guidance of Puja Guruji Swami Tejo Mayananda. Since returning to the States in 1989, she has served and taught Vedanta courses at several CM centers in the US. She received sannyas from Puja Guruji on Shivaratri Day in 2015. Swamini Radhikananda ji has been in New Jersey for the last year now, serving at the Chinmaya Vrindavan Center, along with performing outreach to the local community.
Hari Om, everyone. Let me get a view here. And I have to make one little correction. I have not taught Vedanta courses, only classes. Okay. Hari Om, everyone. So today I'm going to share with you, actually, a Catholic saint, since it's International Women's Day. And this is a saint, Saint Margaret of Castello. She was from Italy, and she lived in the late 1200s, very early 1300s. And she's probably the last saint that I've learned about. I've read dozens and dozens of even the Western saints, and I learned of her only in the last maybe couple years, and she's been extremely inspiring to me. So the challenge is of course to give you as many details as I can in the short time we have, 20 minutes, but I'll try my best. So you'll see why she's been an inspiration to me. So first I'll start with her parents, Parisio and Lady Amelia. They were from noble lineage in Italy in the Apennine Mountains, fairly near Florence, what is now Florence, in a papal state at that time called Massa Trabaria. And it was a very militarily significant area. And anyway, Parisio was a commander of the armies there. And he, because of a significant victory he had won, he and his family were given the castle there. And but he was very proud. He was actually said to be unscrupulous and also indifferent to other people's suffering. In those days, there was intense warfare between rival city states. And his wife apparently, well, there was much good said about her by the medieval biographer of that time, who was lived at the same time as Saint Margaret. Now, so in 1287, his wife was going to be giving birth, and this would be their first child. And you can imagine that Parisio they were both excited, thinking that their first son is going to be born, and he's going to be a great commander as well. They were planning a huge celebration upon the birth of the child in all the areas around. They had invited many people and dignitaries. And on the day of the birth of the child, unfortunately, everything was silent. No trumpets were blown, no flags were flown, no announcements from whoever the people who would announce these things in the towns, because the child was not only born a girl, woe to us, but the child was hunchback, lame, one leg was shorter than the other, and she was a midget. And a week later, they discovered she was also blind. Now, her parents were totally disgusted. And they felt they had been disgraced by God, and that God hadn't paid attention to who they were. And the parents weren't very religious anyway, especially the father. And so the parents wanted to hide the fact that they had given birth to this deformed infant. And so it was hidden from everybody except from those who were right there living in the castle. But they were told under no circumstances were they to allow the child to be seen by visitors. And if anyone happened to see her, they could not say that she belonged to them, to Parisio and the mother. And even, in those days, a child was baptized within a few days of their birth normally. Well, even the mother did not want to go with her child into the town, to the church, to be there at the baptism. So she had the maid take the baby down, and she named the child. The mother wouldn't even name the child. So she was named Margaret, which actually means pearl, which is a symbol of beauty and perfection. So as Margaret grew up, let's say to about 5 years old, she was kept in a totally different area of the castle. She rarely saw her parents, and meaning they rarely visited her. And only once a visitor to the family almost discovered who she was, because she had run out of the room. She was a very cheerful child, very intelligent. The priest who lived there in that area said that she had a luminous intellect, and she could get around the castle on her own wherever she needed to. She was very intelligent, and the priest, of course, taught her, the rudiments of their faith, religion. But when the parents found out that it was almost discovered whose child she was, Parisio, the father, decided to have her hidden, actually imprisoned, they created a little room off of the main church, meaning a local chapel, and it was walled in. She only had one window to be able to watch when Mass was done, and to take communion. And there was one other little window on the other side, and she was given food twice a day. Here she was. This was when she was 6 years old. From age 6 to 13, she grew up by herself. I mean, she was fed, and the priest would visit her, etc. And of course, the maid and all. But to age 13, this is how she lived. So the parents obviously had rejected her and did not want to say that she was theirs. And at first, Margaret didn't understand why this was happening to her, but of course, in Christianity, the ideal is, I would say the understanding of suffering is that if one accepts suffering with, as the gift of God, then it purifies the heart and unites the heart more and more with God. So this is how she was taking these experiences of rejection and, the pain of her. In fact, her parents told her that no one could love her because she was a freak. I mean, it's astounding, really. But she started feeling that actually God was giving her this special gift of being on her own like this. Now, so this went on until she was about 13, I believe. Then suddenly the town where she was living, where her parents were living, was about to be attacked by another, city-state commander. And so Parisio had to take his army and fight them. In the meantime, he told his wife to go to another town, Mercatello, and take Margaret with her and hide her in a vault, an underground vault beneath the castle there, which she did. She took Margaret there, and there she had the priest there couldn't visit her at all. And again, she was only fed twice a day, and she was not allowed to call out for anybody. If she needed anything, she had to wait till somebody came. So then finally Parisio comes back, and he was successful and victorious in this battle. And in the meantime, the mother had heard from in the town from these pilgrims, German pilgrims who came through, were telling people that these miracles were happening in the city or town of Castello. It's actually Chipi di Castello. And that it was happening at a tomb of a Franciscan friar there. And all these, miracles of healing were happening. And so the parents thought, this is our chance. Let's take her there and ask her to pray for healing. Right? And, they thought, okay, this is our last chance. So they took her there, they covered her so nobody would see who she was, or that she was their child. They took her into the church, to this tomb, with a shrine of the tomb of this saint, Giacomo. And they told her, we'll be here in another part of the church, and you pray to be healed, right? And then we'll come back to you. Well, Margaret, by the way, I don't know if I've emphasized enough, she was already deeply religious, deeply spiritual, not just religious, deeply spiritual. And she was praying there for hours. Of course, she was only praying, Lord, let me be healed if it is your will. So she was alone there. Well, there were many, many people around, but her parents went off. In fact, they went sightseeing. They didn't stay in the church. And the day went on. She hadn't had any food or drink. Finally, she heard, because she's blind, she heard people, less and less people there around her. Finally, even the friar who was the caretaker of the shrine came up to her and said, you have to leave now. There was no one else there. He had to lead her to the door. He had to lock the door. And there she was at the doorstep of the church on the street. And so here she is, a young girl, and she realized, and there's more details to that story, but she found out that her parents had left town. They left. When they had come back and seen that nothing had changed, they looked from a distance at her, and they were disgusted, and they just took off. They left town, left her. She had no money with her, nothing, just the clothes on her back. So she remained there shivering on the steps of the church all night. And next part, I'll try to give just the main details, but she was really taken in by the poor of the town. At first they didn't understand, because here she was in expensive clothing, because she came from this family of noble lineage, or wealthy lineage, I should say. But here she was living on the street. But finally, the poor people were the generous ones, and they would let her stay with them, each for a time, and then she would go to someone else, because they weren't wealthy people. So it was, she didn't want to be a strain on the families. However, it was noticed, and this is all in the documents, sworn documents from that time by the village people, that they started noticing that wherever she had been staying, the family who had given her hospitality, they started noticing that things would improve in those homes, that the family members would get on better together, that even those families where there was financial difficulty, their fortunes would improve. She was ever, in prayer. She was, a silent prayer. And so this went on for a number of years. Or sorry, this part, I think, a couple of years, I think. Then people who knew her suggested that she move into this convent of nuns, because she was obviously a spiritual person, and they thought there she'll be taken care of. She won't have to worry about begging and all this. And she was finally accepted into this convent. However, it turned out that, Margaret was very, very deep in her spirituality, very strict with herself, and in her, what we would call tapas. And unfortunately, in this convent, after a long time has passed since a founder, has started something, as with them, the discipline had become much more lax. And, at the times of the day or night when everyone was supposed to be in total silence, just in prayer, that all that was ignored. In the parlor, there would be visitors all the time, and nuns would waste their time in conversations with outside people. And anyway, eventually the nuns started complaining to the prioress. And the prioress tried to talk to Margaret and say, it's more important to be charitable, to be sociable. She was equating charity with being sociable and saying that's more important than following the rules of the discipline of life that they've actually vowed to, right? And so Margaret had the choice which way to go, but she was uncompromising with herself and with her her vows to the Lord. And so eventually she was asked to leave, and she was never criticized the nuns. She never criticized their way of being or living. She just kept her own, practices and just self-discipline. So even when she was asked to leave, and then she was homeless again. And even after she left, she never criticized the nuns, although they told others that it was her fault, And then she was subject to another kind of suffering for some time, and that was public derision, and contempt, because people would hear these rumors from the nuns and believe them. And Margaret never defended herself. But again, eventually, as time went on, the people of the village saw that she was living the spiritual life, and then they understood. Now, then the next part of her life, she joined what is called the Third Order Dominicans, which meant it was called the Mantellata, from mantle. And there are many. You've been signed out. Okay, that's not good. Are you still seeing me? Huh? You still seeing me?
Yes, Swaminiji.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't.
Swaminiji, you're on mute. Just have to unmute.
Are you hearing me now? I
Yes.
didn't do that. I didn't do that. It says the host did. I don't know how that happened. Okay, so so the third order of any religious order means, and particularly this one, Dominicans, means that this was for women, usually elderly women, who were either widows or they had permission meaning agreement from their husbands when they were older, to be lay, part of the lay order. I don't know if you're familiar with that word, meaning that they would not live in the monastery or nunnery, but they would live the spiritual life at home, and also spend their life serving others. And so Margaret was recommended for that, and she was accepted into that, and that was a very, very sacred occasion for her. And this time she wasn't told that she had to modify her love of God or service or self-discipline, spiritual discipline. She was told, part of the vows were to love God above all things and to serve others without limit, without modification. And so that she was in the Mantalata for the rest of her life. And now, so I have to finish in about 5 minutes here. She also began going into the prisons there, which were incredibly horrific. They were underground, no light, no fresh air. They had to sleep on the cold, this is the prisoners, had to sleep on the cold stone floors. They were given very little to eat and no medicine. And anyway, Margaret began going into the hospitals, the prisons, to help these prisoners, to pray for them, to bring medicine and food in every day. Imagine, she's blind, but she would learn the streets everywhere. She would be able to go by herself. And even when she was in the convent, the nuns had been amazed that she could get around by herself. She could help cook. She could help clean rooms. She could do all kinds of tasks by herself. Now, after she was entered this Mantalata, and what's the word? Vowed to serve the Lord in this way. It is said that her sanctity, the depth of her contemplation and prayer seemed to get deeper and deeper. And there are many miracles attributed to her. And for instance, one of the first ones was when she was praying for a young girl who was on the verge of death. They didn't even think the girl would make it through the night. And Margaret prayed on her knees for hours. And 12 midnight, the girl wakes up and says, I am cured. I am cured by the prayers of Margaret. Another time, she was taken into the home of a wealthy family, and she refused to take the comfortable room, and she only stayed in the attic, which was very hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. And one day, a fire broke out downstairs. In those days, they built huge, at least the wealthy homes that had big hearths, they built huge fires for cooking and warming the house. But if a fire broke out, it was very, very dangerous because they didn't have, all they had was buckets. And so this fire was getting out of control, and no matter how many men came to help, they couldn't put it out. They screamed to Margaret, who was upstairs. She comes to the top of the stairs calmly and says, "Don't worry, have faith in God." And she takes off her cloak. She says, "Throw this on the flames." And she tosses her cloak down the stairs, and they put the cloak on the flames, and it all went out. Now I'm going to run quickly. She also cured a nun's, not a nun, but another Mantalata woman's eye tumor. The lady had an eye tumor, and she was scared to death that she's going to go blind. And she ran to Margaret for help because she couldn't afford medical aid. And now here she was, fearing blindness, and she's running to Margaret, who is blind. And Margaret said, accept it. This is a great gift from God. But the lady was, desperate. And Margaret says, put my hand on your eye. And she did that. The moment she put her hand there, the tumor was gone, and she had perfect sight. There are many other miracles where they even saw her rising above the ground when she was deep in prayer for a prisoner who was really suffering physically and mentally. And now I have to finish. So finally, Margaret herself, she lived only to the age 33, because her body itself was so difficult to carry around for that long. And when she died, I hope I can have one extra minute here. The whole town was praying for her. And then when she died, they took her to the church for the ceremonies, for the last rites and all that. And then the friars were taking her out to be buried in the cloister, and the people started shouting, no, she's a saint. You have to bury her in the church. This is what they would do with saints in those days. And anyway, they're fighting back and forth, and the friars who were carrying her bier laid it down on the ground. And at that moment, a couple ran up with their little girl, who was also had an extreme curvature of the spine, was lame and mute. And they put her down next to Margaret's body. And then all the people started praying to Margaret for this little girl. And again, another miracle, that suddenly this little girl jumped up and was totally cured, and was laughing and crying with delight, with joy, and all the people, you can imagine, wild delight at that, delirious joy. So the people went out. She was buried in the church, and even now there's a shrine there, so what maybe we can discuss this later at 9 o'clock, because this saint is so inspiring to me because of everything she went through: physical, mental, emotional, rejection by her parents, by others, just that pain, emotional painfulness. And yet she overcame everything and used every situation as a means to purify her own heart and mind, and to attain that divine love of God. And so she turned pain into prayer, grief into gratitude and grace, and suffering into a sacrifice that became a sacrament. And that's what inspires me about Saint Margaret of Castello. Hariom.
Thank you so much, Radhikanandaji, for that incredibly moving speech on Margaret of Costello. I'd never heard of her, so that was incredibly beautiful and moving for me. Our next speaker will be Brahmacharini Shubhani ji. Brahmacharini Shubhani Chaitanya is a disciple of Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda. She completed the Vedanta course in 2016 and is now posted at Chinmay Mission, New York, where she currently conducts classes on the Bhagavad Gita, Panchadashi, and other Vedantic treatises.
Hari Om. Thank you, Swamini ji, and thank you, Akalka ji. Both were very, very inspiring to listen to and just immerse ourselves in. Today, I'm going to share with you someone who's really inspired me ever since I found out about her. Ever since I found out about her, I just wanted to keep reading and reading more about her. And I even went to Bharat and went to the place where she lived because I wanted to just be beside her. And her name is Devi Ahilyabai. And so I'll just share, I'm going to be sharing some pictures and things like that with you, just so we can sort of journey through her life. So who is, many of us have heard of our women freedom fighters or women heroes in Bharat, but I had never heard of Ahilyabai. And Paramahamsa Yogananda ji said that she is the greatest woman of India. So we'll just see why. So this is Devi Ahilyabai. She was born to Mankoji and Sushila Shinde on May 31st, 1725. So she lived in the 18th century. She was born in a village in Maharashtra. And Mankoji was a village head. He was the head of the village. So Ahilyabai, as she was growing up, she learned everything. She knew how to read, write. She learned all of her household duties, but she also was immersed in spiritual teachings and even physical activities such as archery, fencing, horse riding, etc. So she was really raised like a warrior. And every day, she would go to worship Lord Shiva. Bhagavan Shiva was her Ishta Devata. And one morning, when she was worshiping, she was seen by Subedar Malhar Rao Holkar. He was the ruler of Malwa, a Maratha kingdom. And he saw her, and something about her just captured his attention. And so he wanted her to marry his son. And so that's exactly, what ended up happening. So this is, if you go to her Rajvara, a place where she lived in Indore, this picture is there. This is Ahilyabai, and these are her parents here. And this is her son, her husband, Khande Rao. So this is her and her husband, Khande Rao. So she eventually married him, and she lived in Indore. And, they had a son. They had a son, and they also had a daughter. So this is her son, Male Rao, and this is her daughter, Mukta Bai. And eventually her daughter gets married. So what happened with Ahilyabai here is that when she was married to her husband, Male Rao, right? Khande Rao. She was married to her husband, Khande Rao. He wasn't really interested in these matters. He wasn't interested in the kingdom. He wasn't interested in all of these administrative things that his father was interested in. And so every evening, she used to sit with her husband. She used to sit with her husband, Khande Rao, and she used to tell him stories of the itihasas, of Puranas. She used to tell him whatever she was learning because she didn't want to make him feel left out in any way. And so after some time, also his interest started growing, and he also began to help his father. But eventually what happened with Ahilyabai here is that when she was not even 30 years old, right, in 1754, her husband died. her husband died. So her father-in-law saw in her a successor of the kingdom. And he took much more interest in training her, being with her, spending time with her. He would let her go. I mean, she would go out on her own and he would write letters to her. They would exchange letters and he would tell her what to do with the army, with the military. And Ahilyabai, had great hopes for her son. But unfortunately, in 1766, she lost both her father-in-law and her son in the same year. So this is Ahilyabai. She loses her husband, and when she lost her husband, that was very hard for her to sort of move on. But her father-in-law said, you have to stay because we need you to rule this entire kingdom. And then she loses someone so dear to her, who's her father-in-law, and then she loses her son. And so she's had so many losses, but yet she finds strength to rule. And that's what's so amazing about her, is that she puts everything aside. And she assumes the throne. She becomes the queen of this kingdom. And because she feels like her people now should come first, and she's here to serve. So she takes up the position of queen, and when she does that, she dedicated everything to Bhagwan Shiva. So she always said that this whole thing is Bhagwan Shiva's. All the management, all the affairs were done with the grace of Bhagwan Shiva, and her signature, Sri Shankara, appeared on all her documents. So she really felt that she was his servant, his instrument. So much so that, she took like such a great role that people thought that, Ahilyabai might be vulnerable now. She might be vulnerable now because her husband died, her father-in-law died, her son died, and she inherited a rich treasury. She inherited a lot of wealth because of her family. The family she married into had a huge kingdom. So the Gangadhar, somebody by the name of Gangadhar and Raghoba, they wanted to go and sort of see if they can steal her wealth and threaten her. But she told them, she said, don't think that you can come near me, think about what people would say if you were defeated by the hands of a woman. So she actually, she trained women soldiers. She made sure in her kingdom, she had both men and women soldiers, and she trained women soldiers, and she herself fought. So she kept her kingdom safe because of her strength, because of her wisdom, and also because she fought. And so this Gangadhar, when he was going, she told him, she said, think about what people would say if you die at the hands of a woman. Then he said, no, I'm just coming to pay condolence to your son, to the loss of your son. He completely just changed his mind, changed his thinking. And when he went to meet her, he was so amazed at how she ruled this kingdom. So her rule, Devi Ahilyabai, she ruled for 30 years. And these 30 years was considered the golden age of the Maratha Empire. Because as I said, many other kingdoms were threatened and so many things were going on, but she kept her kingdom very safe, very, very, very safe. And she knew how to handle conflict. And something that I really love about her is that she moved her capital. So her capital was in Indore after she got married, but she moved to Maheshwar. So this is what you will see, Maheshwar. And she did this because she wanted to be near the Narmada River and the Raja Rajeshwar Mandir, which you see here, which is a mandir of Bhagwan Shiva. So she actually wanted to be in a place where when she would wake up, she would see the Narmada River. And she lived very, very simply. She was a very simple queen. So she shifted the capital. She was such a simple queen, you'll see that she was just dressed in white, a very plain white sari, and She lived in a 2-story house. I mean, even if she had so much wealth, she didn't really, take all of that for her. She didn't even use it for herself. And she worshipped her people. She told, so this is a sign that you'll see in Maheshwar. In her days, the population there was 110,000 people. So 111 Brahmins would each prepare a linga, a board with 1,000 Shiva lingas to offer to Narmada River to pray for the people that were around her. And still this tradition continues today with 11 Brahmins. So what did she do in Maheshwar? So this kingdom she now inherited, she patronized a lot of people. So scholars, craftsmen, musicians, bankers. She, actually told them to come live in Maheshwar. She gave them tax breaks, and she inspired this whole industry of weaving. So these are the popular Maheshwari saris. So what happens is, because she had such tax breaks, she supported people, she patronized people, many people wanted to come live in Maheshwar. Many people wanted to come live in her kingdom, so much so that her wealth grew by over 100%. Her wealth grew. And not because she wanted more taxes for people, or not because she took over more land than was necessary, but she did this. Just happened because of her. She was a stateswoman. She was a businesswoman. She was a warrior. She was like everything in one. And when we look at rulers, and sometimes they live such lavish lives, and they do so many things, and they put on such a show. But for Ahilyabai, for Devi Ahilyabai, her schedule was so sattvic. She would wake up before sunrise. She spent her mornings in prayers and study, and she engaged in a lot of charity work. Like, she herself would go out to give alms to the poor. And she held a darbar, like an audience with, and anybody could come see her, and she would listen to everyone's grievances, everyone's complaints, whatever it is that they had. She would perform puja to Bhagwan Shiva. And again, she would have another round of state affairs. So this is, as I said, this is Devi Ahilyabai. She's all in one. She's all in one. And her whole life was in service of her people. And in her whole kingdom, the people flourished. Now, this is, as I said, this is her residence. In Maheshwar, she lived in a 2-story place, and a very, very simple room. And she dressed very, very simply. She didn't take any of these lavish, intricate things upon herself. Now, many times, again, people tried to invade her Maheshwar. People tried to come and challenge her. But her reign, if you look at what scholars say, it's viewed as one of the most stable eras of the 18th century. So she kept Malwa free from internal conflict and invasion from outsiders. Okay, so now we might think, what else about Ahilyabai, right? What else is she? She's a great devotee of Bhagavan Shiva, a very simple, pious woman. She's a queen. She's a warrior. She's a stateswoman. She's a businesswoman. Ahilya Devi is a philanthropist. She is a visionary because at that time she saw that so many temples of Bharat were destroyed. So she took up this task of rebuilding temples, dharmashalas, ghats, wells, like places around the pond, khanas, kitchens, places to feed people, stops for the yatris. She took up this massive work of reviving Bharat. So much so that in every single corner of Bharat, north, south, west, east, every single corner is touched by Ahilyabai. If you go to Badrinath, she helped to build the route to pilgrimage. Kedarnath, if you go to Rameshwaram, she has reconstructed holy sites there. If we go to Kashi Vishwanath, she helped rebuild Kashi Vishwanath. And when you go to Kashi today, what's so touching is that in the new corridor, you'll see Ahilyabai's statue, Ahilya Devi statue. This is her statue in Kashi Vishwanath, just to honor who she is. Every single place. This last December, I went to Bharat. I went to Somnath, and in Somnath, she built a temple there. Ahilya Devi's there. I went to Kashi. She's right there. And that whole Ganga Aarti on Dashwamedha Ghat, that ghat was renovated by Ahilyabai. We went to several Jyotirlingas, all rebuilt by Ahilyabai. It's just crazy how much she has done for our country. When I think about her, I can't even imagine how such a person lived with such humility and such great vision. So as I said, I mean, this is the map, that you'll see when you go to Maheshwar, but it said that over 200 sites were rebuilt by her, renovated by her. But, and they said that's what they have listed, but even more is there. Because what she did was she set up a whole treasury. She set up a whole treasury for charitable funds. And so that trust still maintains and takes care of all of these sites today. So Ahiliabai's, her reign of 30 years, it came to an end August 13, 1795. And she passed away when she was 70. And what's astounding is that even in age 67, she was challenged to fight. And she fought and she won. I mean, so you could just see in one Devi how many different facets were just in this one being. And to me, what just touches me most is her strength. Her strength and her dedication to Shiva. There's this one beautiful event that happened in her life. This poet was so amazed by her, and he wrote of all her glories. And he was so excited to give his poem to her. And she took him to the Narmada River. She welcomed him. She took him to the Narmada River. She took all that poetry and she threw it in the river, because she was very clear that all that she was doing is not for any name's sake, but it was in the service of Bhagwan. And that's how she chose to live. So much so that we may not have heard of her life because she didn't speak about it. But today, I feel so proud because slowly, her name and her glory is being celebrated in Bharat. So in 1996, the government of Bharat, they issued a stamp in honor of her. There's a whole airport in her name, and I was so excited to get to the airport just to be there. So this is her in the airport. A whole Vishwavidyalaya is named after Devi Ahilyabai. Her Rajvada, both in Indore and her place in Maheshwar, both are retained. And today, people still worship her and regard her as Devi. And this is the glorious reign of Devi Ahilyabai. There's of course so much more to her story than I've said, but I hope this much is enough for all of us to just read more about her and be inspired by her selfless life. strong life, and visionary life. Hari Om.
Thank you so much, Shubhani ji, for that incredible overview of Ahilyabai. I also had the incredible opportunity to work on Ahilyabai as part of this project, so I can attest to how truly extraordinary this baby was. So thank you so much. Now we will have Shubhani ji and Akalka ji give us an overview of the Women Seeker Project.
So Hari Om, everyone. I'm sure that you all would have enjoyed so much hearing about the different Devis, how they have contributed and made such an indelible impact. And I think it is one thing that we're working or reflecting on such luminous figures, but really, especially in Sanatana Dharma, we have to say that the power of women is not, these are not exceptions to the rule, this is the rule. There's so much in our entire tradition that has been held up by such glorious women in our own households, how our mothers are regarded as God for us. And in this light, we really are so excited to let you all know about the Woman Seeker book. It will, hopefully be coming out within the year. And this was a book project that was conceived last year. We announced that we wanted some help last year on International Women Seekers Day, and everyone was ready to help. And honestly, it came about only because of that. Devi's grace in bringing together so many people in a shared vision. And the title of the book is The Woman Seeker. And it is 18 Devis and their journey to enlightenment. So this is going to be focusing on Hindu women saints, sages that have walked this path, how many different ways that light has manifested in them, the divine light of spiritual wisdom. Each one is different in their own way. Each one is extraordinary in their own way. They run the gamut. It is impossible to, this book is turning out to be pretty big, but we still feel it is so small in trying to even sort of capture their greatness. And it has just been a real joy and gift from Gurudev to have been a part of it at any level. So, the real central aim of the book is that we want to raise awareness, bring, that pride to all women, that look at the power that we have, and look at the grace that is present already. We don't need to look anywhere else. We have it within us. And in that aim, we just wanted to give you all a little bit of a sneak preview. So the layout is being worked on right now, and it is going to have these beautiful illustrations. We've shown you a few in this presentation, and there's going to be the first section is going to be the story of the Devi, and then the second half of each essay will be their compositions, their works, notable incidents that have been recorded. And so it's going to be a little bit of poetry, a little bit of history, a little bit of philosophy, everything. So it is really just extraordinary, and is going to be wonderful. So please do keep an eye out for it. And now I'll pass it over to Shubhani ji. She will give us some more detailed updates.
Hari Om. So updates, we just wanted to, really thank everyone who's been part of this, who's contributed in so many ways. All of our writing has been submitted. I think our last piece is the glossary, which will be there soon. And the layout of the book design is in progress. So right now we are working with the CCMT team in Mumbai to develop a nice design. We have a layout there, but few things still need to be finalized. And once the design is finalized, then we go through proofreading and printing, and then we will have the books. So it will maybe take a few months more, and then hopefully we will have the books here very soon. So we just kind of also wanted to share with everyone what the process was like. So we had many different writers do research on our Devis. And the initial check was to see the writing quality, to check if the resources are accurate. We tried to get authentic sources as we could, because we found that sometimes certain books have a certain bias to them. So we tried to get as authentic resources as we could. And then we worked with each writer just to hear their thoughts. And then we worked with them on editing it, proofreading it. And then, of course, we had also somebody who was checking facts for us, double checking to make sure everything was okay, and do the diacritical marks and plagiarism. So this was, as Akankaji said, this is only possible because of a team, foremost being Devi herself. Devi herself has come to inspire this project, conceive of it, and has pulled all of us together for one common goal. So now I just wanted to invite a few members from our team to just share their experience. So I'll ask Krishna Priya to come on.
Yes, Hariom, everyone. As I had mentioned earlier, I also had the opportunity to work on Ahilyabai. So I'm just going to share a few of my thoughts on her. Before I begin the project, I had never heard of Ahilyabai Holkar. And by the time I finished it, I truly regretted that I had never met this amazing woman before. It took me several weeks filled with many hours of late night research and many impromptu writing sessions to feel generally satisfied with what I had written about Ahilyabai. But I think that in order to truly feel like I had said enough about her, I would have had to write an entire book just on Ahilyabai. I've gained so much from the time that I've spent with Ahilyabai. Her greatest gift to me, however, was just the hope that her story gave me. Growing up in the United States, throughout my high school and college years, the importance of having leadership skills was routinely emphasized by my teachers and my peers. However, in our society, it can often be difficult to understand how true leadership should actually look. Women especially, I think, are often faced with contradictory expectations of how to be a good leader. We're told things like, be kind, but not too kind. Be firm, but don't be too tough. Be smart, but don't always show it, and so on. So Ahilyabai came into my life. I had graduated college in 2022. So she came into my life at a time where I was feeling particularly confused in my own journey towards understanding leadership. I was kind of figuring all that stuff out. And I was exploring her story. And as I was doing so, I was especially struck by how multifaceted Ahilyabai was. As Shubhaniji had mentioned, she truly was everything. She was a stateswoman, a politician, a warrior, a mother to her subjects. To her people, she was a compassionate mother, but to her enemies, she was a fearsome warrior queen. She never tried to invade or conquer other kingdoms, but she successfully protected her own empire against so many outside threats, including the British, with astounding ingenuity. She respected and supported all religions in her kingdom while working tirelessly to uphold Sanatana Dharma by building and renovating hundreds of holy lands across Bharat, not just within her empire, but also across all of Bharat. So everything life threw at her, Ahilyabai handled with utmost grace. Every role she played perfectly. And I wondered, how could a woman successfully do and be so many things all at once? And as I reflected on her story, I then realized that leadership is not a skill or a science. Rather, it's a selfless commitment to serving others. Ahilyabai didn't spend her time thinking about how to be the perfect leader. She simply focused on caring for her people and honoring Bhagavan Shiva through her every action. And it was that unwavering dedication to service that made Ahilyabai the masterful, unfailing leader that she was. So Ahilyabai's story gave me that powerful sense of hope that when our work is spurred by the ideal of service, success will automatically follow. We don't need to worry about how to be the perfect leader. Instead, we just need to focus on how to cultivate the ideals that underpin successful leadership. Therefore, I am immensely grateful to Ahilyabai Holkar for showing me, for showing all of us the power of Karma Yoga, for showing us that such selfless, perfect leadership is actually possible in this world. This is truly the greatest gift that her story gave me. Thank you so much. Now we will have Rani ji speak and share a few of her thoughts on the project. Rani ji has been both a writer and editor for this project. She also conducted research on various Devis, so helped with other essays along with the ones that she wrote. So let's hear from her about her experience.
Thank you, Krishna Priyaji. Hari Om, everyone. Thank you, Shubhani ji and Akalka ji for spearheading this amazing project. The past year has been such a blessing being a part of this multidimensional journey. It was enriching to be one of the editors with Maitri ji and Sharanya ji and get to read all the 18 essays and how they were shaping up. As a fact checker, I might have rocked the footnotes and bibliography board often. And Krishna Priya ji, you've been such a gem, patiently making the changes or fixing them. I got to polish my rusty skills in reading and translating a few languages. And I also got the beautiful opportunity to research and write about 3 of the Devis. I had never heard of Atpuri Mullah until this project. And I was stunned to learn that Mullah was the first person who wrote Ramayana in a regional language. Mullah Ramayanam was written more than a century before Tulsi Ramayana. What strikes me most about Mullah is her mastery of Telugu poetry, her wit, and infinite compassion. Even in the war scenes, her verses express compassion. Then I journeyed into Swamini Sharda Priyananji's life and teachings. I have been inspired by Sharda Amma since 2002, when Dewdrops of Divinity was published. But I had not found any publications about her life before she became Gurudev's disciple. The amazing and fun discovery of Sharda Amma's past began when my co-writer Shyamala ji and I started reading and translating Telugu articles on Sharda Amma. It was an awesome experience working with Shyamala ji. I also feel very grateful and blessed for the priceless interactions with Swamini Sheelanand. Sheila Magaru became a vast resource, giving insights about Sharda Amma's life and teachings. Sharda Amma's heartwarming poems revealed her journey as a sadhaka, striking a deep and personal chord with me. Sharda Amma continues to inspire me through her legacy. I felt so overwhelmed with learning and writing about these Devis, but still I was very drawn to another Devi, Ganga Sati. Before this project, I had never heard of Ganga Sati either. Thank you, Sejal ji, for bringing Ganga Sati into this project, and Bhumika ji for the resources. Shubhani ji, thank you for connecting me with Brahmacharini Anupama ji, my co-writer. It was awesome working with Anupama ji too. In my first email to her, I asked her if she could acquire a certain book, which seemed to be the only authentic source on Ganga Sati's life. Magically, just a few days before that, Anupama ji had been gifted that very book by the granddaughter of the author. We were so excited about this and connected through time difference and distance. The more we learned about Ganga Sati, the more incredible she became. Ganga Sati lived in the mid to late 1800s, not so long ago. From her life, we see that Vedic culture and lifestyle had not disappeared yet. While trying to understand her Advaitika Grama Upanishad, I feel like I have walked into a Rishika's ashrama, and I'm seated at her feet to learn to know the only thing there is to be known. With Ganga Sati, my thirst has quenched, and my cup runneth over. What a transformational journey it has been, connecting to these Devi seekers. Thank you so much, Shubhaniji, Akalkaji, and the entire Women Seekers team. My pranams to these 18 Devis, Pujya Gurudev, and our glorious Guru Parampara, offering all this seva at his lotus feet. Om Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you so much, Rani ji, for sharing your thoughts on the project. That was incredibly moving. And thanks to all the speakers thus far for sharing all of these incredible stories and overviews. This concludes the main portion of our event. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined as we pay tribute to the amazing babies who have shaped the Women Seeker project. This year-long journey was made possible by the hard work of so many writers and editors and spiritual mentors. And we're so grateful to each and every one of them for their contributions. So before we end our program with closing prayers, just a reminder that we'll be having a Q&A session afterwards. So please do stay back if you have questions or if you want to listen in. But we will now conclude the program with closing prayers. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All right, thank you, everyone. We will now begin our Q&A session with our Brahmacharinis and Swamini Radhikananda ji. Please DM your questions to me, private message them, and I'll go through them in the order that I receive them, and I'll just ask one of the Brahmacharinis or Swamini ji to take your question. So far, I know there's already one question in the chat, so I will go ahead and start with that. Anyone else, please do message me with your questions. All right, this is from Rajan Narayana Swami ji. And she's asking, in recent times, we have seen the emergence of women world leaders like Jacinda Ardern, Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams, Angela Merkel, Nirmala Sitharaman, Smriti Irani, etc. We have seen these women leaders act with an underlying compassion and concern for common people and suffering humanity. They have not exhibited any sense of autocracy, unlike many other world leaders. Do you see more women leaders in the future, and is this a good trend? I guess we can start with Akalkaji if you want to take this question, and if anyone else wants to jump in as well.
I think I got the tough one. Just kidding. But I do think that it's really wonderful that there has been really a tide of energy being given towards just acknowledging the differences in the way that the strengths in the way that women approach, as Krishnapriya even mentioned in her talk, how women approach different problems of leadership, problems of we can't even call them problems, but just situations. And all of the strengths, the fact that women are extremely collaborative, that they think about the whole as opposed to, just one part, because they're very invested in bonds and bringing together, the entire community. And more we see not even just world leaders, but women are also taking up many positions in companies and businesses and things like that, not because men do not have But unfortunately, the society tends to become unbalanced when those qualities are not represented in leaders as a whole. So it is really wonderful. It is definitely a trend. And what we're seeing also is now those strengths in feminine qualities are also being reinforced in male leaders as well. Leaders that are compassionate, leaders that are thinking about their communities, how to bring those areas forward. So it's definitely a trend, and it's doing very well.
Thank you so much, Akalkaji. We currently do not have any other questions. Again, please send them to me if you have any questions. So if someone else wants to jump in and add any more on this question, you can. We do have someone asking if this session will be on YouTube and how soon. So if anyone knows the answer to that.
Yes, we will put it up, and we will send an email to everyone so that you can view it again.
Okay, I guess if anyone wants to, okay. Someone is asking, when is the book to be released?
Kakajim can't be host. Okay, well, it will take a couple of months for the design phase. They just told us in the CCMT office that the designer has to take some few weeks off. So it will be a couple of months, but I think I'm confident by Navaratri, we will have a book. So we'll definitely keep you posted.
Yes, it's still in the process of all the layouts, so we won't have those firm dates until those things are finished.
All right, there are still no more questions in the chat. I guess it is up to the brahmacharinis. Okay, I got one new, okay. May we know if the Saint Akka Mahadevi is featured in the book? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Akka Mahadevi is in the book. I think we didn't have space for all 18 pictures in the slide presentation, but Akka Mahadevi is definitely there, and she was there in last year's presentation. So our, dear Shashiji worked on that essay. It has come out beautifully, and she's extraordinary. So we wish we could, do for all of them, but we only have limited time.
Yes. And someone has asked what criteria were used to pick the women saints. I guess either Shubhaniji or Kakalkaji can take this.
So we wanted to pick women saints and seekers from all over Bharat. So one criteria was that we had to have a saint or seeker from north, south, west, east, northeast. And we also wanted different backgrounds. So if you see the book, there's all kinds of women seekers. There's a child seeker. There's an orphan child like Muktabai. And then there's also a child widow like Avudayaka. There is somebody like Janabai, who was a servant of God, But then there's also someone like a wandering ascetic, like Lala. So, and then of course there's Ahilyabai, who's a queen. And then there's Vakdevi, who's a Rishika. So it's women seekers from different parts of Bharat, from different time periods, from different backgrounds of life. And this is because we wanted to present the variety of women. You know, sometimes we feel so limited that, oh, where are women seekers in Bharat? When we started doing this book, we found that there's so many, there's so many, and we couldn't put all in one book. So that part was definitely tough, but this is what we kept in mind.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much. Someone has asked, where can we read more about Margaret of Costello, her authentic story? So Swamini Ji, if you want to take this.
Sure. Well, this is the main book that I got my information from, Blessed Margaret of Castello, and it's by Father William Bonnewell. Let's see, what did I want to say about? Yeah, in fact, she was only, which is very interesting, she was only, well, you may know, may or may not know that the Catholic Church takes usually years and years and years, even centuries sometimes, to canonize a saint, you know, to officially call them a saint. And there has to be a certain number of miracles and all this. And she was only recently canonized by Pope Francis. I mean, she was considered a saint ever since she was living even, but, you know, the process, whatever. So anyway, I found this book very wonderful, and the author explains in the very beginning, in the preface, where he got his information from, and he explains all about, you know, the medieval biographer and etc. The different things that were written, documents that were written on her, and he did a lot of research. He went to all the places she was and found all the documents and etc. So this is one great book on her, and it's very easy, simple to read. Who was asking that? Was anybody?
Yes, that was Madhavi Pupalaji.
Okay. Hope
Yeah.
that helps. Madhavi, right? Madhavi.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Yes, thank you so much, Swamini Ji.
Thank you.
We have another question from Nirmala Rajanji. Although Mirabai was enlightened, what is the significance of her expression of viraha in her poems? Yes, viraha as in separation. Correct? Yes.
So one thing that is beautiful is this idea that in our expression, physical expression, this body might have its, you know, it has its way of expressing. So though she knows that she is not separate, in that physical expression, she has all of these songs and speaking of that, because these are the joys of the bhakta, is to get to express in this way, you know, just like if we listen to our favorite songs, you know, our beloved might be sitting right next to us, but the joy is to sing as if they're, you know, far. So it's not that she did not know, oh, my Bhagwan is with me all the time. But what happens is, this is the pastime of the bhakta, this is their joy. And also the Lord is very kind in the sense that Lord also enjoys giving joy to the bhakta through playing that lila. That is why it's called a lila, actually. It's a sport. You know, at times appearing, at times disappearing, you know, and then just like the gopis are running and looking, you know, Meera is also looking for her Lord. And at some point when that play also has been completed, you know, we saw at the end of her life that she just merged back into the source. So then she said, okay, playing is done. Now we can put away the toys. So this is something that's very beautiful about our tradition, is the way that all of these expressions happen. We don't have to say, or we don't have to think that, you know, oh, they were not realized because they did this also. They, with full knowledge, they are doing. You know? Even in Tulsi Ramayana, you know, Sati has that question to Lord Shiva. If Lord Rama is the Lord of the universe, why is he crying because Mother Sita is not there? That is the lila. That is the joy. And then for all of us bhaktas who have not realized that, it becomes our path. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Akakaji. That was a wonderful answer. Someone has asked, will there be a sequel to this book? And how can one volunteer to contribute towards it? This is from Meera Payatiji. Shubhaniji, you can take this one.
There may, we don't know yet. We're going to see how this book comes out, and then we may do other things also. But if you would like to volunteer, just send an email to reach out to myself or Akalkaji, and let us know how you would like to help. And so, yes, we could definitely use help. And it was, I think, through the session last year, that's how we were really able to get help from all of you. So yeah, welcome to help. We just don't know what's happening yet.
Thank you. Someone has asked, any plans to set their compositions to music?
Yes. Yes. We have to figure out how and when, but I think that's definitely on the agenda.
Awesome. Okay. Ranjana Chabraji has asked, what is the criteria to be a saint?
In this tradition, there's not like a formalized process, as Swamiji mentioned. In other traditions, sometimes, especially I think in the Catholic tradition, they have that canonization process. So there's like a official board, like if you're getting your doctorate, like they have to approve you. For us, what happens is they are recognized by the people in that way, and it is also right. What is the vision of that tradition, how they define saintliness? Then the person that has those qualities, right, they will, get that name because it is their calling or it is their expression. So there's no formalized process as far as I know. Shubhaniji, maybe you can also add if I'm missing anything, but there's no formal process. What happens is that wisdom that shines from them, that realization or enlightenment or holiness, it is something, it is natural. Just like if you're smelling the scent of a flower, you don't have to ask if there's an advisory board that tells you, does it smell nice? I'm smelling the fragrance. So like that, they are called that way.
Thank you so much. The same individual has asked, is it possible to hear a short recap of the 18 saints? Shubhaniji had mentioned 6 of them. So either Shubhaniji or Akalji.
Shubhaniji.
You can go.
Oh, I was going to say you can read the book.
Oh, okay. I will, yes, if you give me a moment, I will just read that portion for you. Akalkaji, I don't have it here.
Okay, I'm on it.
Then you read.
No, I'm saying I'll look for it. Sorry. One second. I'll see if I can.
We were working, that's a funny question, because Akalkaji and I were working on the back of the book, the back cover. And so we tried to come up with a succinct way to give a sentence to each of the Devis. So I think what we'll read out to you is that. It doesn't have all of them, but it has most of them, but it should give you a pretty good idea of what's coming in the book.
Shubhaniji, would you like me to share it also on the screen?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so, and then maybe Shubhaniji, you can read. Yes, that's what I was thinking, is we don't have all 18 on that one. It's just the subset, but definitely it'll be nice to. Okay. So Hold on 1 second. Okay, there we go. Yes.
Okay. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So I'll just read it to all of you. So we have Andal, cherished daughter who merged with her beloved. Avuday Akal, young widow who sang and danced the song of non-duality. Muktabai, orphan child whose poetry opened the door to seekers' hearts. Jadabai, servant maid served by God himself. Mata Rupa Bhavani, renunciate who reveled in austerity and seclusion. Lala, wandering ascetic who roamed without boundaries. Gargi, daring philosopher who questioned the deepest truth. Atukuri Molla, visionary composer of the epic Ramayana in her mother tongue. Sharada Devi, humble disciple who became the holy mother to all. Anandamayi Ma, blissful mother and pure reflection of the divine. Ganga Sati, householder who cast off her body, leaving 52 songs to go beyond. Ahilya Bai, fearless queen who became the mother of the nation. So we have 12 of them here. Then of course we have the Rishika Vak, who Akalkaji spoke about. And we have Maitri, who's very famous from Bhradaranyaka Upanishad. We have Swamini Sharada Priyanandaji, who Raniji spoke about as well, a disciple of Puja Gurudev. And then we have somebody by the name of Padma Priya. Padma Priya was, she was a wonderful poet from Assam. So she's also going to be in the book. And then somebody asked about Akka Mahadevi. So she's definitely also going to be in the book. And then somebody asked a question about Mirabai. She's also in the book. So if you count these 12 plus the 6 that I just mentioned, you will have 18. We wanted to get 18 on the back cover, but we don't have so much space. So we thought we would give a selection here. So I hope that's an overview, but it's a good overview of what's coming.
Thanks so much, Shubhani ji, for that overview. We do not have any other questions in the chat. So if you have any other questions, please send them to us quickly. I have a quick question for Akalkaji actually. When you were talking about Vak Devi, you mentioned the Devi Suktam, and I don't know if you mentioned this in your overview. So she was saying the Devi Suktam like from the point of view of Devi.
Yes, so as the seer of that Suktam, it means that really she is the conduit for Devi's voice. So what we're reading are Devi's words, meaning goddess herself, and Vak then becomes like the channel by which that expresses. But that's also the glory of Vak, because she had the clarity and the absolute purity to be able to do that. So it is not that she is absent, but that it is her ability and her purity that made it possible. Yeah, that was also, we had a hard time. How exactly do you describe that? Because it's so indescribable. So just really amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow, yeah. Yes, so okay, if no one else has any other questions, I guess we can wrap up. Thank you again to everyone who has joined. As Shubhani ji had mentioned, this recording will be available on YouTube, and that will be shared with you all. So you can check out the program later as well. But thanks again for joining us today.
To say the closing, oh, we said the closing prayer. Yes, okay.
We will just do Om Shanti. That's okay.
Now please do.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.